Please be seated. The poet Mary Oliver wrote, "To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go. To let it go." This is the work we are tasked with. It is the work of love, the work of grieving and releasing. It is both impossibly hard and impossibly beautiful. Today, we celebrate the life of a woman, Ingrid Young, who loved deeply and well, who lived with grace, whose laughter was infectious, whose love for her family was ferocious, who lit up the room wherever she went and could make everyone feel that they were special. And yet, despite all of that, she was only mortal, like all of us. She fell ill, and she fought courageously, with dignity and with humor. But all mortal life must end. And it is this mortality that we are called to let go, but not to let go of the memories, not to let go of the laughter or the lessons or the kindness, not to let go of the love. May we hold that love against our bones, knowing that our own life depends on it, because it does. In early January, Rob found a copy of a blessing that Ingrid had written out by hand some time ago. To her children, it felt like a benediction and a gift from their mother. And they've asked that I share it with you today. It's also printed in your order of service if you'd like to read along. It's called "Blessed Are You Who Bear the Light" by Jan Richardson. Blessed are you who bear the light in unbearable times, who testify to its endurance amid the unendurable, who bear witness to its persistence when everything seems in shadow and grief. Blessed are you in whom the light lives, in whom the brightness blazes. Your heart, a chapel, an altar where in the deepest night can be seen the fire that shines forth in you, in unaccountable faith, in stubborn hope, in love that illumines every broken thing it finds. I'd like to invite Ingrid's good friend, Cindy Bean, up for the first remembrance.
Hello, my name is Cindy Bean. First, my deepest condolences to Rob and family, grandchildren, Eve, Mary Jo, other family and friends. I was invited to speak at my longtime friend Ingrid's celebration of life. What an honor to have known such an amazing woman for over the last 46 and a half years. I will share with you how such a close friendship began and grew over the years. And as I tell you the story, it'll make sense. Ingrid and I met in the summer of 1977. Ingrid was moving into an apartment across the walkway in Boulder, Colorado. From my living room, I watched this lady carrying a baby, Ursula, who was a few weeks old. Ingrid carried the baby in one arm and would go back to her car and bring one item at a time into her new apartment. I thought, I should introduce myself. Perhaps I can help. Being 6 months pregnant with my second child, I could hold the baby, maybe. Angie, my 3-year-old daughter at the time, and I went out and sat on the steps outside. As Ingrid was going by now with a crying Ursula, I stood up, introduced myself as the new neighbor, and offered to help, please. No, no, was the reply. She had it all under control. I was like, okay. Well, after another trip back and forth with the crying baby, who was still getting quite unhappy, I stood up. Please, at least let me hold the baby while you finish. I shall sit right here. I won't run away anywhere. Ingrid agreed, handed Ursula to me, who immediately stopped crying. Ingrid, what just happened? I go, friend, I am not as stressed as you are right now. Babies can sense that. So it began. We shared life together through the years. Endless conversations. Joys, birthday parties, dancing, children being born. Besides Angie, I have 4 more daughters. Ingrid and Rob getting together at a dance that I encouraged Ingrid to invite Rob to. Look what happened there. Turned into a wonderful marriage with 2 additional children, Jamie and Laura, siblings for Ursula. Ingrid was in the stands when I graduated from undergrad. We shared happiness at Angie and Rich's wedding, Ursula and Michael's, grandchildren being born, the loss of parents as life ends. As time moved forward and became packed with the day-to-day, we could go for days, weeks, months, not talk. But the connection remained, and when we would talk or reconnect, see each other again to catch up, it was though we had spoken the day before. So I say, time, a precious thing, invaluable. I am honored to have shared my time with Ingrid while she was on earth. Thank you.
And we'll hear from Ingrid's sister, Eve.
want to thank you all for being here, for the love and support that you gave Ingrid and family during her illness, for all of your prayers and thoughts, for the cards and the flowers, the many visits, for all the dinners, and yes, for the cookies. Ingrid really loved cookies. I know that during the last 18 months, we've been focused on Ingrid's illness. And I want to thank you for being here to refocus and to celebrate her life. My name is Eve, and I was so lucky to have Ingrid as my big sister. She was a great sister. She cared for me and guided me all of my life. Our parents were adventurers, and they may have missed out on some aspects of parenting along the way. But Ingrid was always there. I've been told that when we were both in elementary school, Ingrid would refuse invitations to birthday parties unless I was also invited. Can you imagine a 5-year-old at 8-year-old's birthday party? Our parents lived in Germany, and Ingrid was the one who flew me to Boston to drop me off at college. Ingrid found my husband for me, the only man she knew who was a ballroom dancer in Boulder, Colorado. Later, she taught me how to be a mom. Once when our older son, Brendan, had been crying for hours, I did what I always did. I called Ingrid. Put him in a safe place, she said. I put him in the crib. Do you have any alcohol in the house? So have a drink yourself. Rub some on his gums. He's probably teething. Looking back through the pictures of her, it was hard to find one where she was not holding someone's baby. She loved you so much, the grandchildren, the nieces and nephews on both sides of the family. Ingrid had a great sense of humor, and she loved to laugh. We'll never forget her smile. On Caring Bridge, one of the words often used to describe her was delightful friend. It's not that she didn't see the ridiculous in us. She did. She was ready to laugh. She saw our flaws, but she always forgave us. I'll read you one of her favorite quotes. If you were at Laura's wedding, you've heard this before. She had this. It was a needlework, and it was always hanging in her house. A friend is one to whom one may pour out the contents of one's heart, chaff and grain together, knowing that gentle hands will take and sift it, keeping what is worth keeping, and with the breath of kindness, blow the rest away. Ingrid was a great friend, and she had some exceptional friends. I only knew a few, but during her illness, I was blown away by the close bond that they had. During Ingrid's illness, one of her dearest friends came and bathed her. Another stood by her bed, feeding her small bites of cookie. Another tested her driving ability, and yet another walked with her until she couldn't manage to any longer. And many, many visited and sat by her bedside, even after she had grown so ill that she was unable to talk. Ingrid really worked hard. She was a mom, and she was a property manager in Colorado, and later a highly successful realtor with Berkshire Hathaway. She fostered relationships and trust, and she listened to people's needs. She was a fierce and loving mom. The family in Fox Hill was one of the first to be built in the neighborhood. As a result, there were still creatures on the vacant lots around the house, and some of these got into her newly built house. After Laura was stung by a scorpion in her bed, Ingrid had completely had it. When she found a rattlesnake in the front yard, she did not call animal control. Oh no. She went to the garage and she got a shovel and she chopped that thing to bits. This is a true story. Despite these outbursts, she and Rob raised 3 beautiful, accomplished, and kind-hearted children. Ingrid was a helper. She volunteered on Rape Crisis Team. She volunteered for the Planning Commission of Edmond. She and Rob volunteered with the Sierra Club at Big Bend National Park. And she weeded the labyrinth at Ghost Ranch in Abiquiu, New Mexico. She also volunteered here at this church. More recently, she helped settle Afghan families in the community. Giving advice, caring for others, being a friend, helping others. For me, that was Ingrid's voice. And I'm grateful that during her lifetime, her voice was heard. I know there are some of us here who feel lost and lonely. Some of us have never lived without Ingrid. But when you think about it, she showed us how to live and how to go on with energy and joy, with caring and kindness. For me, I'm next in line. She showed me how to die with sweetness and courage and grace.
I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our hymn. It's number 21 in the gray hardbound hymnal, For the Beauty of the Earth. like to invite Ingrid's husband, Rob.
I'm used to speaking from this side. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to have to hold it closer. I loved Ingrid. I loved her face, her laugh, her body, her conversation. I wasn't going to cry. It's all your fault, Cindy. I love the people who surrounded her. We met January 6th, 1984, and again at her 31st birthday, 3 days later. I noticed her profile while she was dancing with 6-year-old Ursula in her arms. Imagine a young, blonde, Boulder hippie mom in the tie-dyed cotton dress, carrying a kid on her hip when she goes into the health food store. That's the image. You can see her this way in the slideshow, which we hope will be working in the reception. Pictures which old friends have been so kind to send us. At this time, Ingrid was managing so many relationships, her friends, her sisters, her ex-husband, her ex-husband's family, her ex-boyfriend, her daughter's teachers, her co-workers. And I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. So obviously I depended on her for a lot. Our first date, we saw the film Koya Neskatsi. Ingrid was, that spring, she was participating in a human potential training, Life Spring, that supported people in thinking clearly about their lives, taking courageous steps. And I sort of picked up some of the lessons. Anyhow, by March or April, we had decided we were going to get married. We were explicit about our shared desire for more children. She knew more about living in the world than I did. She'd had groups of guy friends in high school, whereas I had never dated. She'd been married, she'd managed a child's illnesses and crises. She had worked through all of her 20s. She lived in public housing, gotten federal food aid for her daycare, been a single mom, co-parented with her ex, befriended fellow young women parents. She had done meditation retreats with the Boulder Buddhist community. She'd worked as a house cleaner, a waitress, a home daycare mother, and a property manager. She could remember phone numbers, many phone numbers for her work. Do you guys remember any phone numbers now? No. After we married, she continued to do jobs that required managing people and situations. We did reevaluation counseling, and we hosted gatherings in our home, focused on supporting children to feel safe in expressing their emotions. She took model mugging, a class that trained women to use full force fighting back against assailants. The assailants were not real assailants, but they dressed up in 50 or 80 pounds of protective clothing. It was like watching her beat up Barney. So we always felt safe walking with her in danger. So I knew of Ingrid's life in her 20s through her stories and her friends. Sometimes I envied them. It seemed like a free living life, time to explore lifestyles and ideas and religions, to party and do adventurous travel. Of course, the reality is probably a little bit different from that. In contrast, our life in our 30s seemed hard. Daily work and parenting, cleaning the house, picking up toys, shopping, cooking, going to work, washing up, mowing the lawn, etc. This was, after all, my first marriage. Diana told us to have short talks, but since I couldn't read it, I increased the font. And that made it much longer. This is a time when I couldn't find an academic position, so pregnant Ingrid and Ursula moved with me to Iowa City for a year. And then we moved back when the university didn't hire me permanently. With the next temporary position in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, she stayed in Boulder with the kids, and I flew back on weekends. Both of these situations were hard on her, and to add to it, then it's like, oh, well, let's just uproot our life and move to Oklahoma. And so here we still are. Her work friends teased her about the wind coming sweeping down the plain. Brand new state, gonna treat you great. She did. I'm gonna give you barley, carrots, and potatoes. The kids are going to talk about our times with Ingrid in Oklahoma. In our papers, I found an undated exercise that we did together to make a statement summarizing our life from the perspective of a retired ending and such. She entitled hers, "My Epic Life." She began as a follower, often timid and confused. She learned that following took her places that were sometimes wrong and dangerous. She learned to follow her own heart and mind and found there great peace and happiness. I'm not sure which side of the learning I was on, but... So in her illness, we talked about what goals she had, what we would have done had I retired earlier, had there been no COVID, to travel to Cuba, to Greece, to North Troy, Vermont, to see the grandkids graduate. We asked what to say to the oldest if she couldn't be there for high school graduation. Tell them I tried. And now comes the cry line. I'll close with the last verse of Richard Thompson's song, Bee's Wing. She was a rare thing, fine as a bee's wing. I miss her more than ever words could say. If I could just taste all of her wildness now, if I could hold her in my arms today, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Laura, James, Ursula. Okay. Hi, I'm Laura, her youngest. How can you sum up our mom? She was kind and open and funny, and a daily comfort and companion to many here in this room. My phone calls with her were an anchor in my week, and the change in this ability during her illness, when I could no longer call my mom and have her answer the phone or expect a phone call from her, was one of the first big moments of losing her. For someone who has lived far away from her, it was a major loss. We lost her in stages, and in that sense, there was some minor comfort in her final passing. She's no longer in pain. She's no longer bored and uncomfortable in bed. But for each change we saw in her along the way, she maintained a core spirit of gratitude and sassiness till the end. She brought sweetness, honesty, and love to the final months of her life. She worked in so many ways, big and small, to make my life better. I remember her encouraging me
to smile at people when I was headed into kindergarten, coaching me to make friends, how to be in this world. She was fiercely loyal to her friends and family. She taught me to live well for myself and to be proud of who I am. She would come visit to help me set up my apartments, making it fun, buying me new towels when she noticed mine were a little ratty, mailing me guidebooks for hikes in the East Bay. She was knowledgeable about the world and incredibly generous. She would often say that helpfulness is the sunny side of control. And I felt like I felt she had a very good understanding of how to not cross that line. She was a wellspring of good advice if you wanted to take it. My mom warned me that life would be hard, and I had no idea what she meant at that time. My sister and I have joked that this may have been an easier loss if she wasn't such an amazing mom. Thanks a lot. My mom made people feel loved. I never doubted her devotion to me. Up through her illness, she would tell me she loved me, looking deeply into my eyes, and she was beloved in return. Her friend Cher said on the day she passed away, there wasn't anything about her I didn't love. I feel the same way. My mom was beautiful, but it wasn't close to the best thing about her. Being with her was easy and fun. I loved going on walks with her, getting a latte and a cookie. The minor errands and moments that make up a life were more pleasant with her by your side. Mom grappled with big questions of fate and destiny, fears of God noticing her good luck and evening things out accordingly. At times, she struggled to find a purpose beyond caretaking, but she loved life, and she was unabashed at pointing out things that brought her joy. I can just hear her saying, "Ooh, look at the fog up there, the foliage, the clouds." She's with me even now when I see these small moments of beauty that she loved to share. She built a beautiful life for herself after a difficult launch into adulthood. Her resilience has inspired me to keep going when the road is uncertain or seems impossible to pass. She loved this world despite its many imperfections, and she really wanted to stick around in it. She was courageous, she didn't complain, even at times when I wanted her to help share some burden. I am endlessly grateful for everything that she gave me, grateful that she was my mom, and I will miss her every day.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm James, her son. These are some things that I want to remember about Mom and some things that I want to tell the world about her that made her special. I wish I'd written this earlier and sent it to her or read it to her, but I think she knew most of it. Ingrid took good care of us. She took good care of me emotionally. She could talk to me about anything I was feeling and explain it to me and help me understand whatever it was I was going through. She could often tell what I was feeling without asking. It was something she'd felt before. She explained how she dealt with it. She would give me impromptu mental health days off school sometimes, something I didn't know I needed, but she could probably tell that I did. She told me what she thought. She was a straight shooter. If she thought I was being unreasonable, she told me. If she was worried about me, she told me why. If she was proud of me, she told me. She helped me and was always asking me if she could help me more. I got the sense that she would have helped me until the day she died if she could. She told me she loved me. She made sure I heard it often. I never had any doubts about where I stood with her and what she thought of me. She had the ability to control her emotions very well. She still felt them, of course, deeply, But I would see her doing counseling and being emotional. But when she was done, it was time to be an adult and an example. And she could do that. She was back in control. This allowed our home to be a calm place where you could feel comfortable and think and get away from the difficulties that happen out there. And as any parent knows, that this is easier said than done. Of course, Dad was essential in that too. She was a remarkably strong person. When she was young, she worked as a roller skating waitress at one point. She started and ran a nursery when I was a baby, and then she worked as a property manager. Those aren't easy desk jobs. Nobody was doing much mentoring until she met Jack in Boulder. I always thought her work trajectory taught her a lot about the world, and she could pass that on to us. She shared her successes, and they were our family's successes. I knew that if she was late picking me up from school, it was because she was working. I was proud of her when things trended up for her in her career. I often had the thought, hey Dad, you got pretty lucky finding someone smart and funny who could also bring home the bacon. She had genuinely useful advice for me. She thought it was okay to view work as work. It didn't need to be your passion. You were better off doing what you're good at and make a good life doing that, and you can pursue your hobbies freely from there. I loved hearing her advice and her wisdom and the stories she told about her and her family's history. I'm gutted that my kids won't get to hear those stories from her. I wish I could hear her repeat one of the ones she's already told me 100 times. It can't have been easy to get ahead as a woman in Oklahoma in the 90s with a family and no long-term family connections around. She got to be the top producer in her office, and I was proud of her. Her successes and failures felt exciting and meaningful to me. When I look back on what we had, I feel grateful because we had it all. We had great schools, love all around, a respectful and positive house to live in, where ambitions were encouraged and the future was bright. Now that I'm trying to provide all of that for my family, I appreciate what we had more and more. She knew how to strike a deal. She put together deals all the time. She had her real estate deals. She had her deals with her Home Sweet Home team of realtors. She had a deal with Cher to cook double casseroles a few times a month so she could free up time for work. She and I had deals. We had a deal that she wouldn't micromanage my homework as long as I did well on my own schedule. Toward the end of high school, she made me a deal about pot, which I smoked occasionally at the time, but don't recommend to a younger audience here today. But I remember her telling me in Hafer Park, just don't get caught for Christ's sakes. She was a lifelong learner. It always seemed like she had a degree in medicine of some sort. She knew so much about it. It was her world, with a lot of her clients coming from the medical school and Dad's friends working there. But she just seemed to know more than any realtor should. She read Nutrition Action. She took care of her health. I've never met anybody who knew more about saturated fats. She was always reading a book and could always recommend a book for you. In middle school and high school, when my friends had a serious question, they would say, hey, your mom seems like she would know this. Can you ask her XYZ difficult real world question? And this was before the days of Google. She had a good moral compass. The stories you heard about her told you that. When a man in her office referred to manual labor as Manuel labor, she didn't laugh along to try to be in the old boys club. She was appalled and told us how disgusting she thought it was. She moved to a different office eventually so she could work with people she got along with better. She didn't like it when people didn't like her for her. When she was young and either heard about or went to a strip club, I don't know exactly, she cried. She felt terrible for the girls who had to do that. She didn't like people who abused their power. She actually didn't even think rich people were all that likable or noble until she met a few that she really liked later in life. She was appalled by what she called chauvinist pigs who had too much power and got away with too much. She was tough. Not everything in her life was easy. Moving around like she did as a kid, having Earhart and Ellen for parents. When was the first time she was truly stable? Probably Edmund in the 90s. Nevertheless, she got it done. That's what she expected of us, too. If I had a reasonable problem, she was caring. If I had an unreasonable problem, she had her phrases for those. Tough shit. Too bad, so sad. I know it's a problem, but now you're wallowing. Or first world problem. And that would help me see the problems as temporary roadblocks. It was hard to see someone like her fighting something insurmountable. I loved her phrases. She seemed to have a phrase for everything. It was the fastest and funniest way for her to joke about some silly thing that just happened. A few favorites. If it was a snake, it would have jumped up and bit ya. No shit, Sherlock. Thank you, Captain Obvious. KIT, keep it together, keep it together, keep it together. And I loved her stories too. She had a story for most occasions, but most of all, she had a horror story to warn me of any dangerous behaviors. If I went on a college trip, she'd say, "Please, Lord, tell me there's not a pool." When Tommy was carpooling Laura and I, she'd say, "Tell Tommy not to speed. He's got my life in that car." She had a great vocabulary for things she loved. Her favorite things were superb and divine. Most of all, I loved her sense of humor. I don't recall having tiresome meals or discussions with her. She always had an opinion, quip, anecdote, or story that made the conversation come to life. Just being around her was so great. I especially loved her sense of humor when it was a little dark. A recent one that tickled her. I believe everything happens for a reason, and sometimes the reason is that you're stupid and you make bad decisions. Even when she was sick, she cracked me up. A nurse did a painful medical procedure and ended it with, "All right, perfect." And Mom said, "It was many things, but I wouldn't describe that as perfect." She treated people with kindness and respect, even people that she didn't have a lot in common with. She had fantastic, fiercely loyal, loving friends. Her friends surrounded her with love and made sacrifices for her. They took care of her in a way that usually only happens when people are contractually bound, as with healthcare professionals or the death do us part contract. I loved her so much. She took great care of us. She made us laugh, showed us the way, and gave us an example to look up to and be proud of. R.I.P. Mom.
We had an extraordinary mom. For proof, I submit to you exhibits A, B, and C. We just kept getting better and less neurotic as she had kids. And we were surpassed in awesomeness only by the people they married, Michael, Anna, and Gabe, and our children, Ephraim, Joy, Lydia, Miriam, Darcy, and Thaddeus. If Mom were here, she would tell you that. We were the great delight and pride of her life and her most important project. Oxford Dictionary defines mothering as characteristic of a mother, in particular being protective, nurturing, and kind. When I think about my mom, those 3 words describe her so beautifully, not just as a mom, but in the way she lived her whole life. Ingrid was protective. For her children, Mom has attacked a Canadian goose that was coming after Laura, chopped up the baby rattlesnake in the yard, and picked up a toddler by the shirt and threatened her when she wouldn't quit biting me at daycare. In describing that story, Mom would say, "It was fine. I knew she was too little to report me." Mom's tiny body suddenly became huge when she needed to defend her children. One time, when she didn't approve of the way Joy was being treated at an art camp, she took a week off work to sit in the back and, quote, make sure they were doing right by my granddaughter. That picture Joy made that week still hangs in our living room. But it wasn't just for her family. Ingrid worked to make the world safer, volunteering as an advocate for the rape crisis team in Boulder and making sure this church welcomed people with disabilities well are just 2 examples. Ingrid was nurturing. Okay, this is embarrassing to admit, but I was in my late 30s and a mother of 4 before the thought even crossed my mind that the way Mom's eyes lit up when I would do a musical show in the living room was not actually about the production value of my shows, but had everything to do with her love for me. The way her eyes lit up when she looked at you, it made you feel safe and known and treasured. It made you believe you really were the best thing since sliced bread, as Mom would say. As a realtor, her favorite part of the job was the welcome tour, because making sure people felt at home delighted her. Mom had a gift for listening well, for providing advice and guidance, and for supporting the best parts of people, at home, at work, and in the bigger world. Ingrid was kind. When I say that Mom was kind, I do not mean that she was nice. Her face did not lie, but in case that wasn't enough, she was never afraid to say what she thought. Mom's kindness was fierce and extravagant. Since she got sick, I've heard so many stories from her friends of times when the chips were down, a kid was in crisis, a marriage was imploding, and she would just show up. Sometimes she would move you into her house for a while or move your kid in, and sometimes she would just buy you a house. She did that on more than one occasion. When I would ask her about that and say, Mom, like, who buys a friend a house? She would just smile and say, I knew they were a good investment. Mom lived from the belief that people were a good investment, and it shaped the way she did things. When new Afghan neighbors came to Oklahoma, Mom worked tirelessly to welcome them well, breaking every single rule on the limits about how you should help. One time I asked her about that, and she just looked at me and smiled and said, yeah, those kinds of rules don't apply to me. It feels impossible to know how to honor such an amazing woman. But if you want to honor Mom's legacy, I'm going to charge you with 2 things. First, in one of her last acts of bossing me around, she told me to tell you this today. Take care of Rob. So, take care of Rob. But, as I did with so many things that Mom told me to do, I'm going to make an edit. Rob has demonstrated so clearly over these last 19 months that he is wildly competent to care for himself and others. The love, patience, steadiness, and calm faithfulness he brought to caring for Mom was beautiful. So I don't actually think he needs our help. But Anyone who loved Mom owes him a debt of gratitude for the ways in which he cared for her. He also deserves a lot of fun, so make that happen. Second, when you think about the ways in which Mom mothered well, with protection, nurturing, and kindness, figure out a way you can extend that to others. There will be bonus points if it involves real estate, underdogs, or new neighbors. And if you can figure out a way to combine all three, it'll make Mom really happy.
Of all the money e'er I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I done for want of wit to memory now I cannot recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I had, they're sorry for my going away, and all the lovers that e'er I had, they'd bid me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call. Good night and joy be with you all. Good night and joy be with you all.
Would you please join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation? Spirit of life, source of love, we are gathered today as a crowd of broken-hearted people. Our hearts are broken by the loss of our dear Ingrid, who left this earth much too soon. As it says in the song, we'd have wished her one more day to stay, or one more year, or many, many years. May all who mourn the absence of our dear friend be comforted by the memories of happy times spent with her. Memories of her laughter, her kind words, her stories, her hugs. May her memory remind us of how important it is to tell others how much we love them whenever we can, while we still can. We gather today as thankful people, Thankful that we lived in a time and place that overlapped with Ingrid's life. Thankful that we knew her. Thankful that we got to know her as a neighbor, a delightful friend, a colleague, a mentor, a role model, a defender, a mother, an aunt, a sister, a wife, Oma, or just as a kind person who helped to make life a little more lovely. We are gathered today as a meaning-seeking people. May we make meaning of our lives, even out of loss, by recommitting ourselves to follow Ingrid's example of caring for others, speaking truth with compassion, courageously taking on leadership when leadership is required of us, humbly putting others first so that they too can shine, speaking out against injustice, seeking spiritual growth, and appreciating life. Life in all its complexity, its tragedy, its comedy, its peace, its wonder. And now, I invite you to take a moment in silence to hold against your heart the memory of Ingrid as you remember her, experiencing the closeness of her spirit. And with all the love in our hearts, let us join in releasing her to the ancestors, to the great crowd of joyful, peaceful spirits, with a blessing. Godspeed, dear one. You have done so well. Your life made our lives better. We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light of love that continues to burn in our hearts. After the service today, all are invited to join the family in Daniel Hall for refreshment and time together. To get to Daniel Hall, just go through these doors and then turn to your right. And now I leave you with this blessing, which is again based on those words by Mary Oliver, who wrote, "To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. Love what is mortal. Hold it against your bones, knowing that your life depends on it. And when the time comes to let it go, to let it go." May you find the wonder in each new dawn, each day of this impossibly hard, impossibly beautiful life. May you open your heart to love so widely that it cracks and breaks like ice on a thawing lake. May you find the wonder in all things that are fleeting, like fireflies and puddles and cookies and baby's tears and childhood. May you dance whenever you can and laugh at ridiculous things and at innocent mistakes. May you embrace the ones you love as though they are your life, because they are. And when you let them go, do not let go of the love. It is the one thing in this world that is immortal. Do not let love go. Even in a time of mourning, as the song says, joy be to you all. Joy be with you all. As the family departs, I invite you to rise.